Hi, this is Kathy Sparrow, and I'm here today on our Ignite Your Leadership Lab with Neel Raman. He not only is a contributor to this book, Ignite Your Leadership, Proven Tools for Leaders for Energized Teams, Fuel Momentum, and Accelerate Results. He is my co-conspirator in this project, my co-collaborator. I could not have done it without him. We're not done yet. But he's been a great partner. We've worked together on this from what, 3 years ago, right, Neel? Deciding who we were going to invite.
3 years, yes.
Yeah. I think it was like 3 years ago, almost this week, that we started at Jack Canfield's Breakthrough to Success. We met at lunch and started looking around the room at our colleagues and said, "Who's in? Who do we invite?" Right?
Yeah. It was an interesting, I guess, seed of an idea at that time. We didn't know it was going to be this challenging, and it's been fun, but obviously it's been challenging as well. So, but I'm sure it's all, as I say, everything's meant to work out the way it's meant to.
Yes, and I've never worked on a book project, and I've been in publishing for about 30 years now. Has it been that long? Probably 20 years in book publishing. And I've never seen a project go exactly the way it's laid out. There's always twists and turns. There's always delays. And, even when I tell my students when they're doing research, I said, expect your project to take shifts and turns. And so with this project, I thought it's going to go exactly the way we set it out to be, because we're going to use the success principles to make it happen. And the universe stepped in and said, don't think so.
Yeah, and Kathy, I think one of the things I've learned from working on this project is to be really clear up front as to what the picture and the vision is for the project itself. I think at the start we were slightly blurred in terms of our vision, and that we probably didn't convey that as well as we could. So people didn't buy in, because as you recall, we had 17 that we started off with on this project, and now we end up with 11. So 6 dropped out for whatever reasons. So whether they didn't think it was something that they could continue buying into, or whether it was something that was not aligned with where they wanted to go.
Yeah, and the other thing I think what happened is we started collaborating on the project, visioning the project with a couple of other people who suggested something like this happen. And then it became a group project rather than you and I really taking the lead and saying, this is where we're going with this. Who wants to come play on this platform? It was, I was the big people pleaser. Want to make sure because everybody we worked with were our friends, right? And so taking that leadership role with friends was my lesson. So
and also, from my perspective, I came from the opinion that our colleagues and friends are leaders themselves, so they're aware. So they would stick to timetables, they would stick to schedules. So it was like, oh yeah, we know these guys, so they'll stick to it. But yeah, it was quite surprising. Plus the fact that I find it easy to write content. I think at least a couple of people dropped out because they just found it challenging to write.
Yes. And
as you know, as a writing coach yourself, writing brings up stuff for people in terms of I guess how they do something is how they write reflects a lot about how they're living their lives. So, and also there's lots of hidden blocks and challenges which they haven't probably addressed. So I think that was another lesson, is like, don't just assume just because you know some people and they seemingly are aware that they will follow through.
Yeah, well, as a RIM facilitator and a writing coach and a writer who has faced the challenges of writing and having, the old guidance counselor on my shoulder saying you'll never be a writer, and always being aware that a little bit of that's still there. I I'm aware it still comes up, but I have that awareness of it, and so I can do something with it. And I think that's true. We've heard Jack tell stories, and I've read a lot of the writing journals and whatnot. I think writing is such a personal way to convey ourselves. I mean, it's like those inward thoughts are coming out, right? And we're being exposed. And and it's also taking us to a different level in our game, right? So sometimes we get afraid of the success that it'll bring. And I'll tell you, I've stumbled over many projects because of like, whoa, this is big, this is huge. My Women, Money, and the Inner Male Connection is a prime example of stopping and starting and stopping and starting, and that's been 2 years in the making.
Wow. Okay. See, like, I'll share an example. Like, as part of this project, like, I had the opportunity to speak to one of the initial contributors who eventually dropped out, and for me, like I just focused mainly on the content. So that particular person was going through a lot of stuff in their personal life. So I supported the person by providing structure in terms of how they could write their chapter, and because I work well with structures and frameworks. So I thought, okay, if I can help the person just with some basic structure in terms of how to write a chapter, they'll probably come through and get it done. But to my surprise, it was still a struggle for that person who eventually pulled out of the project. So again, just because one way works for someone, it's a leadership lesson as well. Just because one way works for someone doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone in a particular group or project or team.
That's right. That's a good point. And you work a lot with teams, and your chapter is Transform Your Leadership. Let me start all over again. Transform your leadership, transcend your team. 5 essentials every leader must know to take their teams to the next level. So let's talk a little bit about your chapter.
Yeah, sure. So as a training professional, and having worked with teams and having a book titled Building High-Performing Teams, there are really some fundamental things that comes down to getting a team to work at a really high level. And for a leader of a team, in order to be able to, I guess, get the team to be functioning at a level that they want to, everything starts with the leader themselves. So leadership starts with self, then comes the team. So one of the principles or pillars, the 5 pillars I talk about in the book, is a leader is not defined by their role, but by their way of being. So that simply means that how a leader shows up will translate or will be modeled by everyone else in his or her team. So if, as the saying goes, how you do something is how you do most things. So people won't follow, won't do as you say, they will do as you do. So that was one of the, I guess, the foundational pillars that I wrote about in terms of why that's so important for a leader to be able to show up authentically and being able to lead themselves first before they can do something for their team members.
That's right. The whole first section of our book is about that internal, that personal transformation before we can really step up and lead other people.
Yes. And I'll share an example working with a particular, I guess, manager or leader of a team. This particular person had a team of 7 people reporting to her, and it was always a challenge for her to get the team to be cohesive and work well together. And during one of my conversations with her, I just kind of asked her, what does leadership mean to you, or what do you think of leadership? And her response was, I don't do the leadership thing well. That's not my cup of tea. I'd rather be behind the scenes and lead from behind the scenes. I'm like, that could work, but I don't think for this particular team that's what's required. And over a period of time, like I just kind of gave her some ideas and tips in terms of how to get the team to be more cohesive. And it all started with her being, I guess, being transparent and being authentic and being able to own up to mistakes and say what she could have done differently when things didn't work out. So, and again, that comes back to being able to lead yourself first before leading others.
Well, it's scary to be vulnerable like that and admit mistakes, saying, whoa, I don't know the answers and I could have done this better. And because we're always thinking we're going to get punished, for that.
Yeah, and that's actually the fifth pillar in the chapter, which is a leader does not have all the answers, but knows how to find answers.
Right.
And being able to stay in the unknown is so challenging for people. And to be able to even just say, you know what, I just don't know yet. Just leave that with me. And I'm sure something will work out, but just leave that with me. And when I do know something, I'll share it with you. But unfortunately, a lot of managers / leaders tend to think just because they've got that title or that role, they're automatically assumed to know all the answers. And it takes a big person to say, actually, I don't know. We're going through these challenging times together. Let's work through this together.
I think we just lost you, Neel. We lost you.
Oh, really?
Oh, there you are. You're back. Okay. Yeah. We actually, our video is off, but we've got your audio.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yeah,
okay?
I can't see you at all, but it came. Pardon? Oh, you can? Okay. Actually, I guess I can. Guess you just didn't pop back on mine. So.
Right. Okay.
No. Okay. Well, we're good, I guess. We're good. Yeah. It's unusual that I have my assistant right here.
This is fun technology.
Yes, modern technology. Let's go through your pillars. Number one, a leader is not defined by their title, but by their way of being. Does that go back to the authenticity and whatnot?
So yeah, that goes back to being able to be your true self rather than putting on a face. So I see a lot of leaders using their role as a way to kind of stamp their authority with their team or their peers or their colleagues. So it's not about the role or the title. It's about how you show up as a person and being transparent and authentic and leading from the front and owning up to mistakes.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll go through all of them. But yeah, the main thing is about being able to be yourself and having the right attitude.
Yeah. And
pillar number 2, and I think this is a big one, a leader creates a safe space for people to express themselves.
Yeah.
So in a recent experience I've had with a team, this particular company had gone through a lot of major restructure, and a lot of people had lost their roles. And so there was a lot of uncertainty. And so it created a team culture of pessimism and frustration, and it wasn't a healthy environment to be around. And when it came to team meetings, one thing that became very apparent was members of the team weren't willing to share what was going on for them. And it was like everything was masked. So rather than being able to share their frustrations or share what they think could be done differently, members of the team just shut up and they just kept quiet. And in one of my conversations with the leader of the team, one of the questions, I guess an observation I made is, I don't think people feel safe to be able to share themselves and share what's going on for themselves. And it all came back to the leader. So the leader had not been willing to be vulnerable, be authentic, and even just say, look, I'm not even sure where we're going. We're going through a turbulent period right now. So everything was kind of just almost swept away, and it just kind of ignored. And that just perpetuated all the issues that kept on happening within this team. So when people don't feel safe, it stifles creativity, it creates uncertainty, it does not foster collaboration or engagement amongst team members. So it has a flow-on effect, a negative flow-on effect, if people don't feel safe in teams. So, but the big thing is, it definitely, if I guess companies focused on bottom line results, it has a direct impact on bottom line results, because efficiency and effectiveness goes down. Obviously, productivity goes down when people are not engaged, when they don't feel safe, they don't feel they're making a difference, or they just basically going through the motions. So that's very challenging.
Yeah, that safety is a big role. And we create that safe space by being authentic and transparent ourselves, right? It's probably
absolutely. Yeah. And also, a leader should be willing to hold his or herself accountable to the team as well. So it doesn't just work the other way around. A leader needs to be held accountable, and team members should be willing to say to a leader, hey, I just heard an echo.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. You kind of cut out there for a second. So a leader should be able to say to the team, what was that?
So a leader should be able to be held accountable, because it shouldn't just be a leader holding team members accountable. If people feel safe, it should be a two-way feedback system as well. So it goes both ways.
Right. You also said a leader knows when to lead and when to manage. What's the difference?
Yeah, and
how would you describe it?
So a manager is more like an operator. So a manager is more concerned about the day-to-day running of the team, ensuring systems are followed, processes are, I guess, kept in check. So a manager is very tactical and more about the process. So a leader tends to be more focused on the big picture, where we're going. This is like Martin Luther King. I have a dream about painting that picture of what's possible. So like in a business or a team environment, the manager actually plays both roles of the manager and the leader. And knowing when to manage and when to lead is a key challenge that a lot of managers aren't able to cope. So they're so focused on day-to-day tasks that sometimes, it's good to have these team goals, team visions, but you only do that once at the start of the year, then suddenly it's all forgotten. So then the rest of the year, you kind of focus on the day-to-day stuff without rechecking in. Hey, are we actually aligned? Are we still aligned to our vision? Is it still happening? Are we on track? So just being able to know those nuances and those distinctions as to there is a time when I need to manage and there's a time when I need to lead is really critical for a leader.
Yeah. Always those fine lines, right?
Sorry, what was that, Kathy?
Always those fine lines, when to decide where.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So the other is a leader maintains presence while staying focused on the big picture. What do you mean by presence? What does that mean to you?
So presence is like, say, for example, I'm talking to you now. It'd be so easy for me to be worried about, hey, did I get a message on my phone? Hey, what's this notification up on my computer? So it's so easy to have my attention being distracted because I'm not present. So presence simply means being aware of the moment that you're in and allowing and fully experiencing it, while everything else around you is still happening, but you're just focused on the present moment. And I see this a lot with managers or team leaders, line managers, whatever you want to call them. They're so, like, they've got so many things on their plate, on their radar, that when a team member comes up to them with something, having a conversation, just even the body language, the eye contact is just even not there. So they look like they're listening or they're hearing you, but they're actually not listening. So we tend to hear with our ears, but we listen with our emotions. So being present is, knowing, okay, I'm here right now. I've got a job to do. I've got a role to do. I've got a team to lead, but also knowing this is where we're going. So going back to the previous pillar as well is about knowing when to manage and when to lead. So being in the present moment, because at the end of the day, that's all we've got. We've only got what we have now. So, and just being present, being aware of the present moment, but also know, hey, we're here, but this is also where we're going.
Yeah, it's like having a foot in both worlds.
Yeah, and look, there's some simple,
present.
Some practical things a leader can do to become more present with their team. And first of all, it starts off by just simply asking questions and asking better questions. So because the quality of your questions will dictate the quality of answers you get. So that's probably kind of fundamental in terms of ask good questions, and that will give you a picture of what's actually happening around you. And that all goes back to supporting this idea of being present and also just being attentive. During your day, you'll hear conversations, there'll be things happening. So just being aware of your environment, being attentive to what's going around you, that's another sign of someone who has got a good level of presence about them. And the third thing that I've talked about in the chapter is just being able to ask and receive feedback. That's really critical as well. So the more feedback, or the more, I guess, the better environment that you can create and have this environment of feedback system, the better off your team will be. Right.
I was just going to say something. Well, a couple of things that, when we studied with Jack, it was like on a scale of 1 to 10, how did my session go, or how did our conversation go, or how did our week go together? That's important. And I know where I was going. The questions, the good questions. Can you give an example of a good question?
An example of a good question. That's interesting. So, like one of my favorite questions to ask is like when someone has an issue or comes to you with a particular challenge. So I like to use, and if you ask them for a solution and they kind of shrug their shoulders and go, I don't know. So it's more a coaching technique. So if you did know, what would you say?
I like that, yeah.
And so it's surprising, like they'll kind of stumble, but they'll always say something. It may not be the right answer or may not be relevant, but there's always an answer. People always have an answer. So just being able to, turn a conversation around and take it from a situation to a solution, that's kind of one of the keys to being able to improve a team. So if you did know, what would you say? Or if you did know, what would you do? That's kind of a good example of being able to use a question to get an outcome.
Yeah. I also avoid why questions. As you know, I'm in the university classroom, first year college students, and always a struggle for them, juggling a new way of being, not high school. They're kind of on their own. It's like, so this week, like we have next week's our last week for summer school, and major projects due, and I'd say 90% of the class, half of the class wasn't showing up, and then out of the ones that were there, only 3 out of 15 did the homework. So that's a fifth. And I just went, instead of saying, why didn't you do your homework? I said, well, what did you make more important? And and silence, because it made them stop to think. So always that, what questions are really good too.
And also, if you recall, one of the exercises we do is the I can't and I won't. So choosing, sometimes we say, I can't do something, I can do something, but if you turn that around, I won't do it. Now, suddenly you have a choice. Oh, okay, I won't do it, rather than I can't do it. So I won't do it. It's implying that I can do it, but I'm just choosing not to do
it. Yes. That's a good one. That's good. So I think, did we cover all of your pillars kind of?
So we touched on a leader does not have all the answers, but knows how to find answers. We touched on that earlier.
Right.
But again, just being able to stay in the unknown is a really critical skill a leader needs to develop. So some of the things a leader can do is, obviously, if you have a habit of saying I don't know, you'll quickly lose respect and trust with your team.
Right.
So that can only work, so often. So, but as a leader, you've got to continually be developing yourself and increasing your awareness around how to lead teams. So sometimes, just because you may not know an answer, if you're engaged in continual education and developing yourself, you may be able to take an example from something you've read, something you've listened to, or you've watched, and kind of twist that around and kind of refine it and make it relevant for your team.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I do believe is wherever there is a problem, there has to be a solution. You couldn't have a problem without a solution.
Right.
So it's just to a leader to be able to take a situation and go, okay, I may not know the answer now, but let's work together to find a solution.
Mm-hmm. So who are some of your leadership mentors?
So obviously Jack Campbell has been an influence. There's John Maxwell, Tony Robbins. He has a leadership academy program, which I haven't attended, but I've heard good things about it. So I tend to kind of touch on different ideas from different leaders. But for me personally, I focus on personal leadership or self-leadership. So everything starts with yourself. So the more developed, the more aware you are, the better position you will be in to be able to do something else, something better for other people.
Right. Good. That's kind of my approach too. I figure if I can't be that continual self-development, if I'm not doing that, then I'm not a very effective leader wherever I'm working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if people ask, what is the number one, trait, quality a leader should have? And for me, it always comes back to self-awareness. So the more aware you are of your beliefs, your thought patterns, your values, your habits, some of your behaviors, the more aware you are, the better position you'll be in to do something about it if you want to change it or improve it.
Right.
So everything just starts off with just having that level of awareness.
Yes, that's true. I bring a lot of the principles into the classroom, in my university classroom, and continually ask my students to be aware. What are you aware of when, what are the connections you are making, about your life when we watch Into the Wild or whatever it is, whatever project we're working on. and I have them do the
Yes.
15-minute reflective writing every morning, just so that they kind of slow down and just kind of figure out what's going on in their life and what's not going on in their life, that's maybe getting in the way of their goals. And always talk about their goals. What you're not just in the classroom to check this off your list. This is a stepping stone to get you to where you want to go. So where are you going? What are you aware of? So
Yeah.
very important.
And you raise a good point in terms of one of the, I guess, a practical way to develop awareness or increase your self-awareness is through reflection, and just having a discipline to, whether it's weekly, I tend to do it daily, but even weekly is a good starting point, just to be able to write down, hey, these are some of the key things that happened this week. These are some of the things I've learned. These are some of the challenges I had. If I were to have an experience like that again, this is what I would do differently. So just having that discipline to be able to just check in to yourself and just know that that's all part of your own personal growth. Yeah. Just checking in, taking time, be quiet, just again, that this concept about being present. Mm-hmm. So just allowing yourself to be quiet and just, okay, I probably didn't handle that situation as well as I could. This is what I would do differently next time.
Right. And that we get a little echo now. And that takes being present with ourselves. And turning off the technology. Yes. Being in that solitude.
Yes. Do you know, Kathy, one thing that I have not done yet is to go to a silent retreat. No, I've always wondered what that would be like. So that's probably something that I will do eventually. But one thing I learned was, I thought, man, if I can go to a silent retreat, I could write a whole book in 7 days. But apparently you're not allowed to write anything. You're just going to sit and do nothing. I'm like, oh my God, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, you can't read. You don't have your technology. You can't write. It's like, and I haven't done that either. And I've done a lot of, personal growth. I have gone to some meditation retreats, and part of it is silent, but,
right.
But I always had my journal, and there were times when we did get to speak to, people in the hall. I went by myself to a Siddha yoga retreat, and that was my first step, I guess, but I don't know, 10 days of silence.
That's tough. So I guess there's got to be a particular objective or intention for doing that. So that probably, for most people, that's probably too intense. So that's too big a curve for people to start off with. Yeah. So which is why just every day, 5-10 minutes of breathing, just some basic meditation is a good way to be able to, one, quieten the chatter in all the noise in your mind, and also just be open to receive inspiration and receive ideas. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's during those quiet moments that we can get some inspired ideas, and like some of the best solutions will come through during those quiet moments. And again, that all ties back to this concept about a leader being present. So it's not always about the activity. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to step out of the situation you're in and just let it be. And that's when you'll probably get some inspired ideas.
Yeah, I think about some of my better ideas come through when I'm just taking a walk, just being, alone, maybe with the dog, and just walking. Just
yes,
leaving the, not plugged in, not listening to music, just being quiet and walking.
Yeah, I tend to use a combination of listening to something when I'm going for a walk, or just nothing. Mm-hmm. So I tend to think, man, that's such a good time to kind of learn something, like do two things at once. But yeah, sometimes it's just better just to be with your thoughts and just allow whatever needs to come through to come through.
Yeah. Sometimes driving too, for me, I do that. I don't have the radio on, not using my phone, and just letting the quiet come through. Sometimes get some of my better thoughts
absolutely.
there too, but that time alone, that time of being unplugged is just so important, especially, we are so busy today, and it takes practice. It's a practice to say, okay, I'm turning my phone on do not disturb. I'm not going to be bothered for the next hour, so I can get, just be quiet.
Yes, yes. And as we're talking about leadership, so it's like that, to me, that ties back to, if you feel safe yourself, you feel confident and aware of who you are and confident in your own self, you'll also want to do that with your team and create that safe space for others as well. So again, all comes back to this piece around self-awareness. The more aware you are, the better off you'll be for yourself and obviously for everyone else
it might
around
be interesting. I wonder if there are any businesses and leaders out there who are actually encouraging their teams to unplug for a certain part of the day, to step away.
Like one of the teams I've been a part of, like we had all full day team meetings, and one of the things we did at the start of team meetings were like a 15, 20-minute meditation. And to think about that meditation in a corporate environment, now that's becoming quite acceptable. It's becoming the norm. So it's not something that's, so this concept around mindfulness, it's so, I guess, so popular now, but it's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. So this idea around just being able to get people into a relaxed frame of mind, relaxed state is so important. And also one of the things I've seen as well is businesses encouraging workers to actually stand up from their desks and just go for a walk, whether it's to the kitchen, going outside to get some air. So it's like, we don't want people sitting down for long periods of time. You may think you're being efficient or productive, but studies have shown that you're actually not. So unless you're giving yourself consistent, regular breaks and getting your mind away, just allowing your brain to relax a bit. So by having these short breaks, you actually, over the long term, you're actually more productive. So, and as a leader, those are some of the things you need to be aware of. So if you're not doing it yourself, it's really hard to tell your team or to do the same thing. So people will just replicate and follow and imitate what a leader does. So if a leader shows up to meetings, so it's just acceptable. So I'll show up late to meetings. So it's just that flow-on effect.
Yeah. So taking those breaks, I think I was actually at the gym the other day, and the screen was flashing some statistics, and I think the idea is to stand up every hour and stretch. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be long. It can just be a couple
walk
of minutes.
to the water fountain or whatever, and kind of change body, change the body position, get the blood flowing again. I know sometimes if I'm writing, I can get a little lost, and before I know it, it's like hours have passed. So I have to be a little more aware of that too when I'm in intense writing times.
Yeah, that's actually a good state to be in. That's
so
like
I hate to break that
flow.
Yeah.
So yeah. And so like sometimes if I'm in that situation, I'm just gonna keep going.
Oh, that's true. That's good. Usually it's like, okay, I've got 15 minutes, let's see what I can get done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, that state of flow, that actually can be cultivated. So that just comes with just having these routines around you that you can put yourself into that state, which allows that flow to come through.
we got a few minutes here. You want to touch on that? Because that's interesting to me. You can actually put yourself into a state of flow. I'm not sure I consciously do it.
So actually, yeah, I'm actually writing an article right now, which is the dangers of waiting for inspiration to arrive before starting something. And you know what? I've been waiting for inspiration to arrive to write an article, and it hasn't happened. So, but a lot of it just goes back to knowing and intentionally cultivating these routines that, and like we talked about this process of reflection, right? So if you have a habit of reflecting on a consistent basis, you can pick up trends and patterns. Hey, like for me personally, I'll give myself a score as to how productive was I today. So sometimes I say 6. It was a 6 because of such and such. Then other times I'll be like, oh, I was an 8. So what happened today? Why did I give myself an 8? So if you capture, so this is like data. If you capture data over a period of time and you go back and review your notes, you'll see, oh, the days I had 8s, these were some of the things I did. So then you can collect those, I guess, those good habits and say, okay, how can I make this a ritual that if I want to get inspiration or be in that state of flow, these are some of the, I guess, the indicators that allows me to become in that state of flow, go into that state of flow. So then you can use that and intentionally cultivate those habits and put yourself in that state of flow. So waiting for inspiration to arrive, unfortunately, if other people did that, we wouldn't have some of the great creations in the world. So inspiration often comes by taking that first step. So starting, then comes inspiration. So yeah, it doesn't mean that you can't get inspiration out of the blue, but most of the time you have to start something, then put yourself in that frame of mind, that state before things come through.
Meditation is one of the biggest things. If I meditate, especially early in the morning, and maybe go back a little bit, I get up and start, my 15 minutes reflective writing. It just seems like, and I go writing a lot more done, and then the rest of the day just feels magical. Maybe that's not the word, but it just feels. I feel like I've been on purpose, and that feels good. I'm not chasing myself around going, oh my God, I didn't get this done.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I was just going to say, Kathy. Do you find that your day tends to be a lot more calmer and you're a lot more centered rather than being in a state of rush and being hectic when you do have that, you start your day with a meditation? Do you find that's the case for you?
I've been teaching early morning class for the last 7 weeks. So there hasn't been time. Early in the morning and then late at night. I've got a split day for the summer. It's almost over. So I haven't had that good meditation time. And I've missed that. And then I'm, 8 days and I'm back into my early morning meditation so I can start the day in a better way. Because I know it makes a difference because I feel the effects of it not having done that for the last 7 weeks. So.
Yeah, and so for leaders listening to this, I guess the key message is about knowing yourself better before you can actually make a big difference to the people around you or your team or people who report to you. So just knowing that there are some little things that can be done. It doesn't even have to involve a great deal of time. So those little things compounded over a period of time will make a huge difference to the way you are, just foster better trust, you'll have a high level of respect with your team members, and ultimately you'll have a team that's a lot more cohesive and a lot more engaged, and they'll be really, churning,
nice.
really working well.
Love it. That was excellent. Any last minute thoughts? I think you just nailed it, though. It was like, wow, that's a perfect way to
Well, I guess last minute thoughts. Having read through this book, Ignite Your Leadership, and having received a forward from our mentor Jack Canfield, I think this any leader who wants to go to another level in terms of their leadership, and doesn't have to be leading a team, but just for themselves, just being able to go to another level in terms of self-leadership, this book will help them tremendously. So it's been, I guess, structured in a way that looks at self, teams, and organization. And it's been intentionally done that way. So there's something for anyone who's a leader. So if you're a leader who only works with organizations, there's something there for you. So around culture, around positivity. So if you want to work with teams, there's content around teams. If you want to look at how you show up, Kathy talked about the power of your story. So there's something for every leader who can take something and improve as a leader themselves.
Yeah. It's an exciting. I'm pleased with the way it's finally come together, and excited to be bringing it into the world at its own divine timing. That's the way it's been. So,
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Yes. And I'm sure it'll help. I guess when we got together, our intention was to do something that would help people in some way. So it ended up being a leadership book. So I'm sure it'll help leaders.
And I really
go
think
to another
too
level.
that, I'm focused on young people a lot. If we could integrate leadership principles into our young people at an early age, there'd be fewer discussions about why haven't you done your homework? Where have you been for the last week? That kind of thing. Yeah. I think the sooner we learn those principles and the sooner we accept that leaders don't have to be in corporations. They can be in families, in communities, in a classroom, any place. That's Absolutely. Really, I think the bottom line there is we many of us have corporate experience, and yet leadership is found in all areas of our lives.
Yeah, and Kathy, if you look at how the world is right now, the world is screaming out for leaders at the moment. And so I think and you're right, it doesn't have to be a leader as a politician or a leader of a major corporation. So leadership can be leading your family, it can be leading your church, your community, helping out as a volunteer. So there are many forms of leadership, and this is the time where leadership is really needed in the world. So I'm glad that this ended up being a leadership book, because it will make a difference.
Well, thank you again, my friend, for showing up with me.
Thank you, Kathy.
It's been fun.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm glad the technology all worked well today.
All right. Well, thank you. And
we've had a few people on as well live, which is great.
From looks like maybe the Middle East, by the looks of it. Yeah. So.
Yes.
Yep. It's global. You've got the southern hemisphere. I've got the northern hemisphere covered, right? Yeah. Global reach.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you. Take care, Neel.
Great talking to you, Kathy. Thank you.
Yes. Take care. Bye.
All right. We'll speak soon. Bye-bye.